The council chamber on Apex Prime Station stretched wider than most planetary capitals. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds filled the vast space, their forms as different as the stars themselves. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some walked on legs, others floated in containment fields. But today, they all shared one thing in common. They were all laughing at humanity. Ambassador G1 stood at the speaker's platform, her small human frame dwarfed by the towering alien dignitaries around her. She had prepared her speech for weeks, carefully crafting words that might finally earn her species some respect. The holographic display behind her showed peaceful images of Earth, of human colonies spreading across nearby systems, of the trade agreements humanity hoped to establish. And so, G1 continued, her voice steady despite the mocking chirps and growls echoing through the chamber. Humanity formally requests mediation rights in the Outer Rim disputes. We believe our fresh perspective could help. A booming laugh cut her off. Counselor Vex Thar of the Krithian Empire rose from his seat, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of theatrical disbelief. His scales gleamed under the chamber lights, each one harder than human steel. His species had conquered 40 star systems through military might alone. Mediation? Vex Thar's voice carried across the chamber like thunder. The humans wish to mediate? Tell me, Ambassador, how many warships does your species possess? G1's jaw tightened. Earth maintains a defense fleet of 47 vessels. With more laughter erupted. Even High Chancellor Mordeeth, the ancient being who had led the Galactic Council for 3 centuries, allowed a thin smile to cross his weathered features. 47? Vex Thar repeated, his voice dripping with amusement. My personal guard fleet numbers 60 ships. The Krithian Empire commands over 8,000 vessels. And you wish to mediate between powers that could sweep your entire species from existence with a single battle group? G1 opened her mouth to respond, but Vex Thar wasn't finished. Your ships still use chemical propulsion for maneuvering. Your weapons are kinetic slugs and primitive missiles. You have no energy shields, no quantum displacement drives, no plasma lance technology. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. 23 years you have been part of this council, and still you remain children playing with toys. The chamber filled with chittering agreement. The Viridian Collective's representatives whistled their amusement. The Thoraxian observers stomped their feet in what passed for their species' laughter. Captain Daejung stood in the viewing gallery above, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched his ambassador endure the humiliation. His ship, the Resilience, waited in one of the station's docking bays. It looked exactly like what Vex Thar described, an outdated, bulky vessel with visible hull patches and outdated sensor arrays. He had commanded it for 5 years, and every day he had maintained the illusion. Beside him, Admiral Hyun watched in silence. The old man had arrived from Earth just yesterday, making his first appearance at a council session. His uniform was simple, bearing none of the decorations he had earned during the resource wars. His face showed nothing as he observed the mockery below. Admiral, Daejung whispered, perhaps we should wait, Hyun said quietly. Below, G1 tried once more. If the council would consider our proposal? Consider? Vex Thar interrupted again. Why should we consider anything from a species that cannot even defend its own colonies? Did you think we wouldn't notice, Ambassador? For 6 months, my Empire's training fleets have been conducting exercises near your outer settlements. Raids, really. Taking supplies, testing your defenses. He spread his arms wide again. And what have you done? Filed complaints. Sent diplomatic protests. Evacuated entire colonies rather than fight. The truth of his words stung because they were accurate. Human colonies on the frontier had been harassed for months. Small Krithian fleets would appear, disable communication satellites, steal resources, and disappear before human ships could respond. Earth's military command had issued strict orders. Avoid engagement. File diplomatic protests. And above all, reveal nothing. The strong rule the galaxy, Vexthar declared, his voice rising. The weak serve or perish. This is the way of things. The way it has always been. Humanity is weak. Your technology is primitive. Your numbers are insignificant. You have no place at this table beyond the charity we have shown by allowing you to remain. G1's hands trembled at her sides, but she kept her voice level. We have followed every protocol. We have honored every treaty. You have been tolerated, Vexthar said flatly. Nothing more. High Chancellor Mordith raised one withered hand, and the chamber fell silent. His species lived for thousands of years, and he had seen empires rise and fall. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ages. Ambassador G1, he said, not unkindly. Counselor Vexthar's words are harsh, but they reflect a truth we must all acknowledge. This council was formed by species that proved their strength. Military power ensures independence. Without it, a species remains at the mercy of others. He paused, his ancient eyes studying the human woman. Perhaps humanity simply does not possess the capacity for true military strength. Some species are builders, others are warriors. There is no shame in knowing your limits. In the viewing gallery, Admiral Hyun finally moved. He walked to the railing, looking down at the scene below. Dae-jung watched him carefully. The Admiral's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes had changed. G1 took a breath, preparing to defend her species once more, when Vexthar rose again. I propose a test, the Crithian announced. The Outer Rim. Disputes center on the Helios cluster. Let humanity prove they deserve a voice at this table. Let them defend the cluster against a Crithian battle fleet. If they succeed, we grant them full voting rights and military protection status. He bared his teeth in what his species considered a smile. If they fail, humanity withdraws from the council and accepts tributary status to the Crithian Empire. The chamber erupted in excited chatter. Species that had been bored by the diplomatic session suddenly leaned forward with interest. This was entertainment. The challenge is recorded, High Chancellor Mordith said. Ambassador G1, do you accept these terms, or will humanity withdraw from consideration? G1 looked up at the viewing gallery, her eyes meeting Admiral Hyun's. The old man gave the smallest nod. The Reason making Maltavan Rublum. Chrisen Biling. Round 7 plan. She turned back to the council, her voice clear. Humanity requires time to consider. Request. Formally accepted. Admiral Hyun's voice boomed across the chamber. Every being in the room fell silent, turning to look at the human admiral in the gallery. G1's eyes widened in shock. Hyun looked directly at Vexthar, and for just a moment, something flickered across the admiral's face. Something cold and ancient and absolutely terrifying. Then, it was gone. Replaced by the calm expression of an old military officer. 21 days, Hyun said simply. We will meet your fleet in the Helios cluster in 21 days. Bring as many ships as you wish, Counselor. Bring your best. Vexthar's smile widened. I shall bring 200 vessels. More than enough to crush your entire species' military. I shall bring. Doncom. I shall bring. As you say, Hyun replied. He turned and walked toward the exit, Dae-jung following quickly behind. In the chamber below, the council members began placing bets on how quickly the human fleet would be destroyed. Some said hours. Others, being generous, said perhaps a full day. None of them noticed the small smile on Admiral Hyun's lips as he left the chamber. None of them wondered why a species that seemed so weak would accept such a challenge so quickly. None of them questioned what humanity might be hiding. They would learn soon enough. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology. It was their patience. And that patience had just run out. 3 weeks passed like a countdown to execution. Across the galaxy, every species watched as humanity scrambled to gather their forces. Long-range scanners tracked human vessels, converging from distant colonies, moving slowly through space with their outdated drives. The broadcasts from Apex Prime showed urgent diplomatic meetings, human representatives requesting aid that never came. It was exactly what everyone expected. Panic. Desperation. The inevitable collapse of a species that had overreached. On the colony world of Haven's Rest, Dr. Sumin worked in the medical center, treating the last of the wounded from the most recent Crithian raid. The small settlement of 5,000 humans had been terrorized 3 weeks ago when Crithian ships arrived, disabled the orbital defenses, and sent down troops to gather supplies. They had taken 6 months' worth of food stores, destroyed the communication arrays, and injured 43 colonists who tried to resist. "Hold still, Mr. Park," Sumin said gently as she sealed the wound on the elderly man's arm. "The tissue regenerator needs another minute." "They're coming back, aren't they?" Park asked, his voice hollow. "After they destroy our fleet, they'll come back here." Sumin didn't answer immediately. She finished the treatment and helped him sit up. Through the window, she could see the construction crews working frantically to rebuild the settlement's defenses. More walls. More bunkers. Preparations that everyone knew were useless against a species that commanded thousands of warships. "The fleet will handle it," she said quietly. Park laughed bitterly. "With 47 ships? Against 200 Crithian vessels?" He shook his head. "We should have stayed on Earth. We should never have come out here." After he left, Sumin stood at the window for a long moment. Her hand moved to the small pendant around her neck, a gift from her grandmother. On its surface was engraved an old Earth saying, "The tiger who hides his claws is still a tiger." She wondered if the galaxy would understand that saying soon enough. Far above Haven's Rest, in the darkness between stars, Commander Taeyang sat in the pilot's chair of the Silent Observer. His ship was invisible to every scanner in known space, using technology that officially didn't exist. For 2 weeks, he had been shadowing the Crithian battle fleet as it assembled near their home system. 203 vessels confirmed, his sensor officer reported. Composition matches intelligence estimates. 74 heavy cruisers, 96 destroyers, 28 carriers, 5 command ships. Taeyang studied the display. The Crithian fleet was impressive by galactic standards. Their ships were larger than human vessels, with powerful energy shields and plasma weapons that could tear through conventional hulls. They moved in perfect formation, a demonstration of military discipline honed over centuries. "They're broadcasting on all channels," the communications officer said. "Want to hear it? Put it through." Vexthar's voice filled the bridge, full of confidence and contempt. "Attention, human forces. In 6 days, the Crithian Empire will arrive at the Helios cluster to claim victory. We invite all species to witness this historic moment, when humanity learns the price of arrogance. We will be merciful in victory. Your colonies will be absorbed peacefully, and your people will find purpose serving the Empire." The message repeated in a dozen galactic languages. Taeyang switched it off. "They really believe they've already won," his tactical officer observed. "Let them believe it." He opened a secure channel, one that used quantum entanglement to communicate instantly across any distance. "Silent Observer, to command. Package is wrapped and ready for delivery. They suspect nothing." Admiral Hyun's voice came back immediately. "Acknowledged. Maintain position. Protocol Nightfall remains in effect until my signal." "Understood, sir." Taeyang closed the channel and leaned back in his chair. Protocol Nightfall. He had hoped never to hear those words in his lifetime. Every human in the military knew what it meant. It was the authorization to reveal what humanity really was. He thought back to his history courses at the academy, lessons that every human officer learned but were never shared with other species. The resource wars of the 2100 seconds, when Earth's nations had nearly destroyed themselves fighting over the last scraps of fossil fuels and rare minerals. The weapons they had developed in their desperation, artificial intelligence that could command entire armies, nanite swarms that consumed everything in their path, biological weapons tailored to specific genetic markers, bombs that created miniature black holes. Humanity had stood at the edge of extinction, and in that darkness, they had created horrors that terrified even themselves. The wars had ended not through victory but through collective horror. When the dust settled and 2 billion people lay dead, the survivors made a choice. They sealed away the worst weapons they had created. They established protocols that would prevent such madness from ever happening again. And when they finally reached the stars and found the Galactic Council, they made another choice. Show them only what they expect to see. Chemical rockets, kinetic weapons, primitive but functional. Nothing that would reveal what humanity was truly capable of. It was a gamble that peace could be maintained through patience rather than fear. For 23 years, it had worked. Humanity had been mocked, dismissed, sometimes harassed, but never truly threatened. They had built their colonies slowly, traded carefully, and watched the galaxy's empires posture and fight their small wars. But the Krithian Empire had pushed too far. Colonel Byung-ho stood on the ramparts of the defensive position on Haven's Rest, watching his troops prepare. 2,000 soldiers worked methodically, setting up artillery positions, digging trenches, establishing kill zones. They wore combat armor that looked outdated compared to Krithian gear, carried rifles that fired metal slugs instead of energy beams. "Sir," his second-in-command approached. "Perimeter is secure. All civilians have been moved to the underground shelters." "Good," Byung-ho replied. "How long until the fleet engagement?" 5 days, sir. 5 days until the Helios cluster battle would determine humanity's fate. Byung-ho had served in the military for 20 years, and like every human soldier, he had trained for 2 different kinds of warfare. The kind they showed to the galaxy, and the kind they hoped never to use. He checked his rifle, a standard-looking weapon that fired armor-piercing rounds. Reliable, effective, and completely conventional. Beneath his feet, in storage bunkers 50 meters underground, sat the weapons they didn't show anyone. Smart mines that could hunt targets autonomously. Drones the size of insects that could deliver toxins specifically designed to bypass Krithian biology. Artillery shells that carried payloads even he didn't fully understand. "Do you think they'll use Protocol Nightfall?" his second-in-command asked quietly. "Admiral Hyun authorized it," Byung-ho replied. "But how much they'll reveal?" He shook his head. "That's above our level." Across human space, similar preparations continued. Ships that had appeared damaged and outdated suddenly moved with surprising precision toward the Helios cluster. Cargo vessels that looked peaceful diverted from their routes. Mining stations on remote asteroids went dark, their crews evacuating to unknown locations. The galactic news networks tracked it all, broadcasting humanity's apparent panic to every world in Council space. Betting pools grew larger. Some species wagered on whether humanity would even show up for the battle, or if they would surrender before the first shot was fired. On Apex Prime Station, Ambassador G1 sat in her quarters, reviewing the diplomatic fallout from the challenge. 23 years of careful relationship building, potentially destroyed in a single moment of military posturing. She had sent messages to Admiral Hyun, demanding to know why he had accepted Vex's Thar's challenge so readily. His response had been brief. "Trust me. Trust your species." Now she sat in the observation lounge, watching the stars and wondering if trust would be enough. A familiar presence sat down beside her. "Ambassador," Admiral Hyun said quietly. G1 turned to look at him. The old man seemed calm, almost peaceful. "You destroyed everything I built," she said, trying to keep the bitterness from her voice. "No," Hyun replied. "I'm trying to save what you built. You wanted humanity to be respected for our ideals, for our diplomacy. I admire that, But this council will never respect those things from a species they view as weak. He gestured toward the stars. In 5 days, we'll give them a different reason to respect us. By revealing our weapons. By revealing enough, Hyun corrected. Enough to make them stop laughing. Enough to make them think twice before raiding our colonies. But not so much that they see us as the monsters we could be. Ji-won studied his face. What did we become during the resource wars, Admiral? The history books sanitize it. But you were there. You saw it. Hyun was quiet for a long moment. We became something that scared ourselves so badly, we chose to lock it away forever. Or at least, we tried to. He stood slowly. Get some rest, Ambassador. After the battle, you'll have real work to do. Building peace with species that finally understand what they're dealing with. He walked away, leaving Ji-won alone with her thoughts and her fears. In the Helios cluster, the last human ships arrived and took their positions. 47 vessels, spread across the asteroid field, in defensive formations that looked desperate and poorly planned. Their hulls showed wear from years of service. Their weapons ports looked inadequate for the fight ahead. Aboard the Resilience, Captain Dae-jung watched his crew make final preparations. Every one of them knew the truth. Every one of them had trained for this moment, while hoping it would never come. 5 days, he said quietly to himself. 5 days until the galaxy learned that humanity's patience had always been a choice, not a necessity. 5 days until the silence began. The Helios cluster hung in space like a graveyard of stars. 3 dying suns cast red and orange light across thousands of asteroids, creating shadows that stretched for millions of kilometers. It was a perfect battlefield, plenty of cover, difficult navigation, and enough sensor interference to make long-range targeting almost impossible. The Crithian fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 203 warships, emerging from faster-than-light travel, in a formation that spoke of absolute confidence. Their hulls gleamed even in the dying starlight, energy shields shimmering around each vessel like protective bubbles. Every major species in the galaxy watched through sensor platforms positioned throughout the cluster. The broadcasts reached billions of viewers across hundreds of worlds. This would be the moment when humanity's place in the galactic order was finally, permanently established. Counselor Vexthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unbreakable Will, and smiled at the tactical display. The human ships looked exactly as pathetic as he had expected. 47 vessels scattered among the asteroids, trying to use the rocks for cover like frightened prey animals. Open a channel, he commanded. Let me speak to whoever leads this doomed fleet. Captain Dae-jung's face appeared on the view screen. The human looked tired, his uniform rumpled, his ship's bridge showing signs of hasty repairs in the background. I am Counselor Vexthar of the Crithian Empire, Vexthar announced. By the authority of the Galactic Council, I am here to demonstrate your species' inadequacy. You may surrender now, and I will be merciful. Your deaths will be quick. Dae-jung's expression didn't change. We decline your offer. Then you choose extinction, Vexthar said simply. He cut the channel and turned to his tactical officer. Begin the assault. Target their command ships first. I want this over within the hour. The Crithian fleet advanced in perfect formation, weapons charging, shields at maximum. They moved like a wall of steel, overwhelming and unstoppable. The human ships opened fire first. Missiles streaked from their launch tubes, old-fashioned chemical rockets that left bright trails across the darkness. Point defense lasers from the Crithian fleet swatted them aside easily. Then came the kinetic rounds, metal slugs fired from magnetic accelerators. They impacted against Crithian shields and bounced away harmlessly. Primitive, Vexthar muttered. Absolutely primitive. The Crithian ships returned fire. Plasma beams lanced through space, hitting the nearest human vessel. Its shields flickered and died. The humans barely had shield technology at all. The beam cut through the hull, and the ship erupted in a ball of flame and debris. Across the galaxy, viewers watching the battle nodded knowingly. This was exactly what they had expected. For the next hour, the battle continued in brutal fashion. The human ships fought desperately, darting between asteroids, firing everything they had. But one by one, they were destroyed. 6 vessels became drifting wrecks, their crews presumably dead. Vexthar watched with satisfaction. The human tactics were clever enough, using the asteroids for cover, trying to separate his fleet. But cleverness meant nothing against overwhelming power. 41 human ships remaining, his tactical officer reported. Their formation is collapsing. Push forward, Vexthar ordered. End this. That's when Admiral Hyun spoke. His voice came across every channel in the cluster, broadcast to every sensor platform, heard by every being watching the battle across the galaxy. One single word, spoken with the weight of finality. Enough. The 6 destroyed human ships suddenly came back to life. Their hulls reassembled. Nanite repair systems revealing themselves as the damage disappeared. They hadn't been destroyed at all. They had been bait. The asteroids themselves began to move. Thousands of rocks that had seemed natural suddenly lit up with engine burns. They weren't asteroids. They were ships, hundreds of human vessels that had been hiding in the cluster for weeks. Their hulls camouflaged. Their systems running silent. And behind the dying stars, something massive began to emerge. Vexthar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The single largest ship he had ever seen was entering the battlefield. The Reckoning stretched 3 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapon systems that made his flagship look like a toy. Its hull was midnight black, seeming to swallow light itself. Impossible, Vexthar whispered. The humans don't have, they never showed. More ships appeared. Carriers the size of small moons, launching thousands of autonomous fighters. Destroyers that dwarfed Crythian heavy cruisers. Cruisers that looked like they could crack planets. How many? Vexthar demanded. How many ships? Counting. Over 400 vessels now visible, sir, his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. And more, appearing every second. From one of the massive carriers, designated the Wraith Wind, Commander Insu watched his fighters deploy. Each one was controlled by quantum processing AI that could react faster than any biological pilot. They moved in perfect coordination. Swarms of death that flowed through space like schools of metal fish. All wings deployed, his tactical officer reported. 3,000 fighters active. Insu opened a channel to Admiral Hyun aboard the Reckoning. Wraith Wind ready, sir. Release the swarm, Hyun ordered calmly. The autonomous fighters hit the Crythian fleet like a wave. They moved in patterns that seemed random but were mathematically perfect, each one covering another, creating kill zones that the Crythian ships couldn't escape. Their weapons weren't plasma or energy beams. They were kinetic penetrators fired at 30% the speed of light, moving so fast that Crythian shields couldn't adapt quickly enough. A Crythian destroyer exploded as 3 fighters punched through its shields and fired point-blank into its reactor. Then another. Then 5 more. Shields are failing, Vexthar's tactical officer shouted. They're adapting to our frequencies. That was impossible. Shield adaptation took hours of analysis, but the human fighters were doing it in real time. Their quantum processors analyzing Crythian shield harmonics and adjusting their weapons with each shot. The larger human vessels opened fire. What emerged from their weapons ports wasn't anything the Crythian Empire had seen before. Streams of metal that moved like liquid, flowing around shields and eating through hulls. Missiles that phase-shifted through solid matter and detonated inside ships. Energy beams that somehow passed through shields as if they weren't there. Return fire, Vexthar commanded. All ships, return fire. The Crythian fleet responded with everything they had. Plasma beams, fusion torpedoes, mass drivers, and quantum disruptors. It was enough firepower to level a continent. The human ship's shields absorbed it all. But these weren't the simple shields the humans had shown before. These barriers rippled and shifted, adapting in real time to each attack, dispersing energy, deflecting matter. Technology. decades beyond what any Council species possessed. Electronic warfare detected, a Crithian technician screamed. They're hacking our systems. Wine? 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 Vexus Thar watched in horror as 3 of his own ships turned their weapons on their neighbors. Human electronic warfare had penetrated Crithian systems thought to be unhackable, taking control of everything from life support to weapons. Sever all network connections, he ordered. Manual control only. But it was too late. The Crithian fleet's coordination collapsed as ships were forced to operate independently to avoid being hacked. Their perfect formation dissolved into chaos. Captain Daejung watched from the Resilience as the battle turned into a slaughter. The Crithian fleet was good, well-trained, well-equipped, professional. Under normal circumstances, they would be a terrifying opponent. But humanity hadn't been fighting normal circumstances for over 2 centuries. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Crithian vessels. Cease fire on any ship that powers down weapons, Daejung ordered. Disable them. Don't destroy them. This was the line Admiral Hyun had drawn. Show them strength, but not cruelty. Demonstrate superiority, but not the full extent of humanity's capabilities. The real weapons, the relativistic kill vehicles that could strike from light years away, the singularity bombs that could collapse stars, the biological agents tailored to specific species, those remained hidden. This was just conventional warfare. By human standards, within 30 minutes, half the Crithian fleet was disabled or destroyed. Vex Thar's flagship tried to flee, its engines burning at maximum as it attempted to reach the faster-than-light jump point. The Reckoning moved to intercept. Despite its massive size, it moved with impossible grace, sliding through space like a knife through water. A tractor beam locked onto the unbreakable will, holding it in place as easily as a giant holding a toy. Admiral Hyun's face appeared on Vexithar's view screen. The old human looked calm, almost sad. You wanted to see our military power, Hyun said quietly. Now you have. But understand this, Counselor. What you've seen today is restraint. These are our defensive forces, our conventional weapons. Letting the words sink in. We have weapons that could end your empire in days. Weapons that could sterilize your homeworld without ever landing a soldier. Weapons that scared us so badly, we locked them away and swore never to use them. Vex Thar's scales had turned pale with fear. You've been hiding this for 23 years? We've been hoping we'd never need to show it. Hyun corrected. We came to the stars, looking for something better than what we left behind on Earth. We wanted peace. We wanted cooperation. We wanted to build instead of destroy. His expression hardened. But you mistook our patience for weakness. You raided our colonies. You mocked our offers of peace. You forced our hand. The battle was over. 73 Crithian ships had been destroyed. The remaining vessels floated powerless, their crews trapped as human boarding parties moved in to take control. Across the galaxy, billions of viewers sat in stunned silence. Every species that had laughed at humanity, every empire that had dismissed them as primitive, every individual who had bet on their quick defeat, all of them were watching the same thing. The Helios cluster filled with drifting Crithian wrecks, while human vessels moved untouched among them. On Apex Prime Station, High Chancellor Mordith watched the footage with ancient eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. Beside him, representatives from every major power sat frozen. They've been hiding this the entire time, someone whispered. What else are they hiding? Another asked. The question hung in the air, unanswered and terrifying. Admiral Hyun broadcast one final message, sent to every world in Council space. Humanity has no desire for conquest. We want only peace and the right to exist without fear. But let this be understood across the galaxy. We have been holding back. We chose restraint because we learned the cost of unrestricted war. We nearly destroyed ourselves once, and we will never forget that lesson. His voice grew harder. but we will also never again allow ourselves to be prey. The mockery ends now. The raids end now. We will defend ourselves and our allies by any means necessary. The transmission ended, and across the galaxy, for the first time in its 3,000-year history, the Galactic Council fell completely silent. 3 days after the Battle of Helios Cluster, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Every seat in the vast chamber was filled. Species that normally sent only junior representatives now had their highest leaders present. The air itself seemed heavy with tension and fear. For the first time in the Council's long history, absolute silence reigned as Ambassador G1 walked to the speaker's platform. No chittering, no whispered conversations, no mocking laughter. Thousands of eyes from hundreds of species watched her every movement. Admiral Hyun stood beside her, still and watchful. He wore his full military uniform now, with every medal and decoration visible. Each one represented battles from Earth's resource wars. Conflicts so brutal they had nearly ended human civilization. The other species didn't know what those medals meant, but they could sense their weight. On the displays around the chamber, footage from the battle played on repeat. Crythian vessels being torn apart. Human fighters moving in impossible patterns. The massive form of the reckoning dominating the battlefield. Every major news network across the galaxy had been showing nothing else for 3 days. High Chancellor Mordeith called the session to order, his ancient voice carrying across the silent chamber. Ambassador G1 of Earth, you requested this emergency session to address the Council. You have the floor. G1 took a breath and began to speak. Her voice was calm, without triumph or anger. 3 days ago, you witnessed what happened when humanity was pushed too far. For 23 years, we have been members of this Council. For 23 years, we have followed every protocol, honored every treaty, and respected every decision made in this chamber. She paused, looking around at the assembled species. And for 23 years, we were mocked, dismissed, treated as children who barely deserved to be here. No one interrupted. No one dared. You called us primitive because we showed you primitive technology. You called us weak because we chose not to demonstrate our strength. You raided our colonies because you believed we would not fight back. G1's voice remained steady. You were wrong. About all of it. A holographic display activated behind her, showing technical readouts of human military capabilities. Not everything, not even close, but enough to make her point. Weapon systems that violated known physics. Defensive shields that adapted faster than should be possible. Ships that moved using principles the Council's scientists didn't understand. Counselor Ix, then, of the Viridian Collective, rose slowly. Her species was known for their academic excellence, their libraries holding the accumulated knowledge of 10,000 years. When she spoke, her voice trembled slightly. Ambassador, what we saw in that battle, that level of technology, that level of coordination. She gestured at the displays. Even with these readouts, our scientists cannot understand how your ships function. The quantum processing, the adaptive shielding, the weapons that phase through matter. She paused. That is not what you showed us for 23 years. So I must ask the question everyone in this chamber fears to speak aloud. What you revealed in the Helios cluster, that is not everything, is it? The chamber became even quieter, if such a thing were possible. Admiral Hyun stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was like iron wrapped in velvet, strong but controlled. No, he said simply. What you saw was not everything. Fear rippled through the chamber. Representatives shifted in their seats. Some species' biological signs of stress, changing colors, releasing scent markers. Physical trembling became visible. Hyun continued, his words measured. What you witnessed was our defensive fleet using conventional military technology. By our standards, conventional. He let that sink in. You have not seen our strategic weapons. You have not seen what we are truly capable of when survival is at stake. Well-faced. 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 General Kratok of the Thraxian Dominion, whose species had built an empire through military conquest, stood up. His species valued strength above all else, and he had seen enough warfare to recognize what he was looking at. "Show us," he demanded. "If you wish to intimidate us, show us these weapons you speak of." Hyun nodded to G1, who activated another set of displays. What appeared made several council members physically recoil. "Relativistic kill vehicles," Hyun explained, indicating the first schematic. Projectiles launched at 99% the speed of light from the edge of a star system. By the time you detect them, they have already arrived. The kinetic energy of a small asteroid, moving at near light speed. We have 73 platforms capable of launching them. Hidden in deep space. The display changed. Nanite swarms. Self-replicating machines smaller than a cell. Programmed to consume specific materials, starship hulls, for example. Once released, they spread exponentially. A single swarm could consume an entire fleet within hours. We created 12 variants during the resource wars before we realized what we had done and sealed them away. Another schematic appeared. Quantum tunneling warheads. They do not travel through space, they tunnel through it, appearing directly inside a target. Shields cannot stop them. Distance is irrelevant. We could strike any world in Council space from Earth instantaneously. G1 watched the Council's reaction. Some members looked sick, others angry. All of them looked terrified. "And biological weapons," Hyun continued, his voice growing colder. "During our wars, we mapped the genome of every human ethnic group. We developed pathogens that could target specific genetic markers. Viruses that would kill some populations while leaving others untouched." He looked directly at the assembled species. "We could do the same for any of you. We know your biology. We have samples from every species on this council. If we chose to, we could develop a plague for each of your worlds that would be perfectly tailored to your genetics." The chamber erupted, not in laughter this time, but in shouts of outrage and fear. "This is a threat," someone cried. "They are monsters," another voice called. "We should destroy them before they destroy us." General Kratok's voice boomed across the chaos. Silence. The chamber quieted, though the fear remained palpable. "Are you all fools?" Kratok demanded, looking at his fellow council members. "They are showing us these weapons for a reason. Did you not hear what the Admiral said? These weapons already exist. They have existed for over 2 centuries. If humanity wanted us dead, we would already be dead." He turned to face Hyun. "You sealed these weapons away. After your wars, when you nearly destroyed yourselves, you locked them in vaults and swore not to use them. That is what you are telling us." "Yes," Hyun confirmed. "And yet you reveal them now?" "Why?" G1 stepped forward again. "Because for 23 years, we have tried to earn respect through our ideals, through diplomacy, through cooperation and peaceful trade. We wanted to be part of something better than what we left behind on Earth." Her voice grew stronger. "But this council does not respect ideals. It respects strength, military power, the ability to destroy. You raided our colonies, not because you needed resources, but because you wanted to test how much we would tolerate. You mocked us not because we were genuinely primitive, but because we appeared weak." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. "So now you know. We are not weak. We never were. We chose restraint because we learned the cost of unrestricted warfare. We chose patience because we hoped for something better. But that patience has limits." "What do you want?" High Chancellor Mordith asked quietly. "Equality," G1 replied simply. "No more raids on our colonies, no more mockery, no more dismissal of our proposals because we are young or small or supposedly primitive. We will seal these weapons away again. We will continue to show restraint But only if humanity is treated as equals in this council. And if we refuse? Someone asked. Admiral Hyun answered, his voice carrying no emotion. Then we will withdraw from the council. We will close our borders. We will defend ourselves by any means necessary, and any species that threatens us or our interests will face the full extent of our capabilities. He paused. We do not want this. We came to the stars hoping for peace, but we will not be prey. Lust. The chamber fell silent again. The choice was stark and terrible. Accept humanity as equals, knowing what they were capable of, or reject them, and face the possibility of becoming their enemies. High Chancellor Mordith looked at Ji-won and Hyun for a long moment. His species lived for thousands of years, and he had learned to recognize pivotal moments in history. This was one of them. The Council will vote, he announced. All species in favor of granting Earth full voting rights and military protection status indicate now. The vote was unanimous. Not because every species suddenly respected humanity's ideals, but because they finally understood what humanity could do if those ideals were pushed aside. Ji-won felt no satisfaction in the victory. She had wanted to earn respect through cooperation, through the content of humanity's character. Instead, they had earned it through fear. Admiral Hyun seemed to sense her thoughts. As they left the chamber, he spoke quietly. You built the foundation with your diplomacy. 23 years of proving we could be trusted, that we honored our word, that we sought peace genuinely. He looked at her. Without that foundation, today would have made us tyrants. But because of your work, because of our restraint, we are something else. Partners who happen to be very, very dangerous to cross. Is that enough? Ji-won asked. It will have to be, Hyun replied. The galaxy respects strength. We have shown them strength. Now we continue showing them that strength can be tempered with wisdom. In the days that followed, the galactic order shifted fundamentally. The Krithian Empire formally apologized and offered reparations for their raids. Vex Thar was stripped of his rank and titles, exiled to a remote colony world. Other species that had dismissed humanity suddenly sought trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. But more than that, something else changed. The casual warfare that had characterized galactic politics for millennia became more cautious. If humanity had been hiding such capabilities, what might other species be concealing? For the first time in recorded history, the major powers began seriously considering the cost of conflict. On Earth, Admiral Hyun submitted his retirement papers. He had done what was necessary, but showing those weapons, even just describing them, had brought back memories he had tried to forget. The resource wars. The billions dead. The moment humanity had looked into the abyss and nearly jumped. He returned to his home in Seoul, to a small garden where he could grow vegetables and try to forget the weapons he had helped create. But he knew the truth. Those weapons would never truly be forgotten. They existed in secure facilities, guarded by people like Commander Tae-yang. Waiting in the darkness, humanity had revealed just enough to earn respect. But the full extent of their capabilities remained hidden. The galaxy had fallen silent, not just from shock, but from the terrible understanding that had settled over every species. Humanity was dangerous, not because they wanted to be, but because they had learned how to be. And the fact that they chose restraint made them more dangerous still, because it meant they were in control of their power. The silence would last for a long time, and in that silence, perhaps something better could be built. 1 year passed. The galaxy was not the same place it had been before the Battle of Helios Cluster. The change was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, subtle, like the shift from night to dawn. But everyone felt it. On Apex Prime Station, Ambassador Ji-won walked through corridors that once echoed with dismissive laughter. Now, when she passed other species representatives, they nodded respectfully. Some even stepped aside to let her pass. It was not the recognition she had wanted built on fear, rather than respect for humanity's ideals, but it was recognition nonetheless. She entered the council chamber for the morning session. High Chancellor Mordeith acknowledged her with a slight bow, something he had never done before the battle. She had been promoted to Deputy Chancellor 3 months ago, a position usually reserved for species that had been council members for centuries. Deputy Chancellor G1, Mordeith said as the session began. Please present the human perspective on the trade dispute between the Viridian Collective and the Thoraxian Dominion. G1 stood and outlined a compromise that addressed both sides' concerns. The proposal was thorough, fair, and well-reasoned. When she finished, both parties accepted it without argument. This, too, was new. Before, her proposals would have been dismissed or heavily modified. Now, they were implemented almost exactly as she suggested, but G1 understood why. It was not because her proposals had suddenly become better. It was because no one wanted to anger humanity. No one wanted to risk pushing them too far again. After the session, General Kratok approached her. The old warrior had become something unexpected, a friend. Your mediation was excellent, as always, he said. Though I suspect the Viridians agreed more quickly than they would have otherwise. Because they fear us, G1 said quietly. Yes, Kratok admitted, but also because they trust you. Fear brought them to the table. But it is your fairness that keeps them there. You have never used humanity's power to bully or threaten. That matters more than you know. Far from Apex Prime, on the colony world of Haven's Rest, Dr. Su Min stood outside the medical center and watched children play in the rebuilt town square. The Crithian raids had stopped immediately after the battle. Not a single human colony had been threatened since. Dr. Su Min. A young girl ran up to her, excitement bright in her eyes. Look what my dad helped build. The girl pointed at the new community center, a beautiful structure that combined human and alien architectural styles. Workers from 3 different species had helped construct it, a joint project that would have been unthinkable a year ago. It's wonderful, Hana, Sumin said, smiling. Dad says we're safe now. He says nobody will hurt us anymore because everyone knows humans are strong. The girl looked up at her with innocent eyes. Are we the scary ones now? Well, Su Min thought carefully about her answer. We are strong, she said finally. But being strong does not mean being scary. It means we can protect the people we love. It means we can help those who need help. The girl seemed satisfied with that answer and ran back to her friends. Su Min watched her go, hoping it was true. Hoping that humanity's strength would be remembered for protection rather than destruction. In orbit above Haven's Rest, Captain Dae Jung commanded the Resilience on its patrol route. His ship no longer pretended to be outdated. It showed its true capabilities. Now advanced sensors, powerful weapons, adaptive shields. But Dae Jung made sure his crew used those capabilities carefully. Sir, we're detecting a distress call. His communications officer reported. Civilian freighter, Viridian Registry, reporting engine failure in the asteroid belt. Set course to assist, Dae Jung ordered immediately. Medical team, stand by in case there are injuries. This too had become part of humanity's new role. They were not just warriors now. They were peacekeepers, first responders, the ones other species called when they needed help. It was better than being feared alone, though the fear was always there in the background. The Resilience reached the damaged freighter within an hour. Dae Jung's crew provided repairs and medical assistance, refusing payment. The Viridian captain was grateful but also cautious, the way one might be grateful to a large predator that chose not to eat them. Safe travels, Dae Jung told the freighter captain as they prepared to depart. Thank you, the Viridian replied. Then, hesitantly, Commander, before the battle, my species laughed at humans. I am ashamed of that now. You could have destroyed us all for such disrespect. But you did not. You showed mercy even in victory. That means something. Means. After the freighter left, Dae-jung sat in his command chair and wondered if that was enough. Gratitude mixed with fear. Respect mixed with caution. It was better than mockery. But it was not the friendship humanity had hoped for when they first reached the stars. On Earth, in Seoul, Admiral Hyun tended his garden. The vegetables grew well in the spring sunshine. Tomatoes, peppers, beans, simple things that required patience and care. It was peaceful work, far removed from the weapons he had once commanded. His granddaughter, Min-jae, visited every week. She was 7 years old, bright and curious about everything. Today she helped him water the plants, her small watering can splashing water everywhere. "Grandpa," she asked, "my teacher said you were in a big battle. She said you made the whole galaxy afraid of us." Hyun paused in his work. He had known this conversation would come eventually. "I was in a battle." "Yes. And yes. Some species are afraid of us now." Is that good?" "It is. Complicated," Hyun said carefully. He knelt down to her level. "Sometimes, being strong means people will not try to hurt you. That is good. But if people are only afraid of you, they will never truly be your friends. They will just be waiting for you to leave them alone. So we want them to like us, not just be scared of us?" "Yes," Hyun said. "And that is harder to achieve. It takes time and patience and doing the right thing, even when no one is watching." Min-jae thought about this while watering a pepper plant. "Are we doing the right thing now?" "We are trying," Hyun told her. "We showed the galaxy we are strong. But now we must show them we are also kind. Both things are important." That evening, after Min-jae went home, Hyun received a secure communication. It was from Commander Tae-yang, still serving as guardian of the arsenal. "Admiral," Tae-yang's face appeared on the screen. "Day 412 of peace. Requesting permission for routine maintenance on Storage Facility 7. "Permission granted," Hyun replied. This too was part of the new reality. The weapons still existed. They still needed to be maintained, guarded, kept ready in case they were ever needed again. "Sir," Tae-yang said, hesitating slightly, "do you think we will ever truly be able to forget what is in these facilities?" Hyun looked out at his garden, at the peaceful evening sky. "No," he said honestly. "We will never forget. But perhaps our grandchildren's grandchildren will live in a galaxy where these weapons are not needed, where our strength allows us to build peace instead of just enforcing it. That is worth hoping for." "Yes, sir," Tae-yang replied. Day 412 of peace. May we have many more. Across the galaxy, the silence that had fallen after the Battle of Helios Cluster continued. But it was no longer just the silence of shock and fear. It was becoming something else, the quiet before words are spoken, before relationships are built, before understanding grows. At a research station in neutral space, Dr. Sumin's colleague, a Viridian scientist named Taleth, worked beside her on a project to cure a plague affecting 3 species. A year ago, such cooperation would have been impossible. Now, it felt natural. "The human approach to genetic mapping is remarkable," Taleth commented. "We could learn much from your medical technology." "And we from yours," Sumin replied. "Your understanding of cellular regeneration is more advanced than ours." They worked together into the night, 2 scientists from different worlds, building something that would help others. It was a small thing. But small things could grow. In the council chamber, Ambassador G1 proposed a joint military exercise between human forces and the Thraxian Dominion. Not a display of power, but a training exercise to improve coordination and understanding. "If we are to have peace," she argued, "we must learn to work together. Fear alone cannot sustain peace forever. We must build trust." The proposal was accepted. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. Captain Dae-jung's ship participated in the first exercise. He watched his crew work alongside Thraxian soldiers, sharing tactics and techniques. There was caution, yes, but also genuine curiosity. The Thraxians wanted to understand how human technology worked. The humans wanted to learn Thraxian battle philosophy. It was not friendship yet, but it was the beginning of something that might become friendship. Given time, years would pass. Decades. The memory of the Battle of Helios cluster would fade from immediate fear to historical fact. New generations would grow up in a galaxy where humanity's strength was simply an accepted reality, like the stars themselves. But those who lived through the silence, who watched the galaxy change in the wake of humanity's revelation, would always remember. They would remember the moment the galaxy fell mute, stunned by the realization that the species they had mocked was the most dangerous of them all. And they would remember what came after. That humanity, having shown its teeth, chose to smile instead. That humanity, having demonstrated its capacity for destruction, chose to build instead. The greatest weapon humanity possessed was not the relativistic kill vehicles waiting in the darkness of space, or the nanite swarms locked in secured facilities, or the quantum warheads that could strike anywhere instantly. The greatest weapon was restraint, the choice to be more than what they could be, the decision that peace was worth more than power. On Earth, in a garden in Seoul, an old man tended his vegetables and taught his granddaughter about patience and kindness. Above him, in the orbital facilities he had once commanded, weapons of unimaginable power waited in silence. They would wait for a long time, he hoped. Perhaps forever. The galaxy had learned that humanity was dangerous. Now it would learn that humanity was also wise. That wisdom, born from nearly destroying themselves, was perhaps their most valuable gift to the galaxy. The silence that followed the Battle of Helios cluster was not an ending. It was a beginning, the first moment in a new era where strength and restraint walked hand in hand, where fear slowly gave way to respect, and respect might someday become something more. In the vastness of space, countless species watched and wondered and slowly began to understand. Humanity had unveiled their true military power, and the galaxy had fallen mute. But in that silence, seeds were planted. Seeds that might grow into something the galaxy had never truly known. Real peace. Not enforced by threat, but chosen by all. Not maintained by fear, but sustained by mutual respect and understanding. It would take time. Perhaps generations. But humanity had learned patience through suffering. They could wait. The monsters in the dark would remain caged, and the garden would grow,